Running back De'Von Achane spoke with the South Florida media this week and outlaid some pretty big hopes he has for his 2025 season. We're exploring that here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, the author of Touchdown Miami on Substack. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today on the show, looking at De'Von Achane, his role within the offense, what it was last year, how it can continue to grow. He spoke with the media, talked about being able to play in all 17 games this season. The Dolphins effectively made him the featured player in the offensive backfield. And I think there are ways for the Dolphins to kind of tinker with De'Von and his utilization and his usage to keep him on the field, to maximize the versatility that he brings, but maybe optimize some more of what his touches look like. So we're going to get into those kinds of things here today on the show. And I want to start with a quote that De'Von talked about when he was asked about his season this past year. And it was something that I thought you saw when you watched De'Von and some of his reps last year. Not necessarily finishing runs the way that maybe you would have hoped. And this is, again, part of keeping a player fresh. And, De'Von said he felt healthy. He didn't feel like he was banged up. He, of course, played in all 17 games. From a snaps perspective, De'Von finished this past year with 704 snaps offensively. 62% of the offensive workload started 16 of the 17 games, played in all 17. But De'Von said, going back and watching the cut-ups of the year, I felt like I left a lot of yards on the table, which I would agree with, where this wide zone rushing system puts a larger than average piece of the success of rushing plays on the back, because offensive linemen, they're getting out of the blocks and they're creating this stretch of the point of attack, and they are coached and taught, if you find a defensive player is on your inside half, you pick him up and you'll log him and you'll seal him. If you find an defensive player has jumped 3 yards in the backfield and has shot up the field, you ride him out. If you have a defensive player who's stringing out with you along the point of attack, you stay on the tracks, you ride that guy to the sideline, right? You take defenders as you find them and let the back make you right. And this was something that I saw on film with Jaelen Wright last year as well. And it felt like maybe that was one of the things that was prohibitive to him getting a larger workload than what I think a lot of people, myself included, wanted to see, just because he had a different stylistic running tonality to the way that he plays. Was, for both De'Von and Jaelen Wright, you're getting the ball out of the mesh point where the quarterback puts the ball in your belly, and you've got your first read as the end man on the line of scrimmage, and you're making a yes-no read off of that. Is the edge captured? If the answer is yes, then you're going to push to the outside hip of the tight end on the play, right? And then you're going to look to catch the edge and turn upfield, up the sideline, and that's where you can hit some explosive plays if you successfully capture the edge in that process and force the corner to miss the tackle. But if the answer is no, then you work gap by gap back into the middle of the field and potentially all the way back out the back door to say, where's the gap? Where's the crease? And as you're pressing towards your landmark, that gap can declare itself for you to stick your foot in the ground and explode at any given point in time. And it just felt like there were some times where they had the edge, but Devon saw space early and chose to go. And with Jaelen, it felt like it was a lot of, hey, we don't have the edge, but you have a cutback lane on the front side, A gap, stick your foot in the ground and get north. And that cut was never made. It was, well, it's designed to hit outside, so I got to hit it outside. And then it's a 1 yard gain or a 1 yard loss behind the line of scrimmage because you carried all the way to the sideline and you never caught the leverage based on the structure and how the defensive player played the point of attack. So to hear De'Von Achane, who I saw this on film, for him to have the same conclusion for himself, I think is really good awareness of what went right and what went wrong with some of his reps last year. And he was one of the players that, from a negative runs perspective, and the Dolphins as a team is a negative runs perspective, had more runs for negative yards last year than any other team in football. So you add all that up and you have maybe, hey, instead of bouncing outside here with kind of a muddy read because I want to get outside and hit a big play, hey, let me hit this thing here in the B gap that's available and get 3-4 yards. And he was asked in a follow-up, in what way did you leave a lot of yards on the field? What can you do to better your game to make sure you maximize all those runs in 2025? Devon said, it's the day-to-day stuff. I felt like it was more me rushing and me not going. I'm supposed to do this, but me trying to make a big play instead and just doing the right thing, and it was there. Because maybe it wasn't there the play before, thinking, okay, this is going to be a different play, stuff like that. So kind of not taking each individual rep and the coaching points and the execution of it for what it was, because that's what I thought made Devon so dangerous as a rookie in 2023 when he rushed for, what was it, almost 8 yards a carry, right? It was all just kind of instinctual. Is the space there? Yes or no, make the decision instead of compounding as the featured player and having twice as many carries, and the efficiency drops and you only average 4.5 yards per carry, but you also have all these negative runs that are a piece of the puzzle as well. But De'Von Achane and his utilization extends beyond just running the football. This is a player that had 87 targets for the Dolphins this past year, and perhaps that's where there's some meat on the bone. And Devon talked about kind of his split and what would be a successful season for him as a football player. We're going to be talking about that next here on Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. There's nothing like the NBA playoffs, the intensity, the buzzer beaters, the fans losing their minds. It's the kind of atmosphere you got to experience for yourself. This year's matchups are delivering with a lot of exciting games and finishes. If you want in, Game Time makes it easy and fast to get tickets, even for the biggest playoff games. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to tip-off. And with killer last-minute deals, panoramic seat views, and no surprise fees, Game Change is a total game changer. I love the panoramic views because I know what kind of sight lines I like to get at the venue. And it's not just for sports. It's concerts, comedy, theater, more. You name it. And with the NFL schedule releasing, you better believe, we're scheduling some ticket trips to not just South Florida and Hard Rock Stadium, but all across the country for some games. And Game Time makes scoring NFL tickets just as easy. You can find great seats for as low as $100 thanks to exclusive discounts. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets for the lowest prices, guaranteed. So De'Von Achane was asked what a good season would look like for him personally and individually. Devon said, every year I want to get better, but as far as numbers, I always want to try to hit 1,000 yards and then 500 yards receiving. I feel like I can do that as far as how much I'm being used. And in the past game, like I was this past year, I had a lot of receptions. Me watching the film, felt like I left a lot of plays, or I felt like I could have did more. So 1,000 and 500 split, which he was 193 rushing yards away from that split this past year individually. He finished with 281 touches, 1,499 yards from scrimmage. The per touch average was down about 2.25 yards from the previous season, but the yards per target was up, and you saw the utilization kind of diversify, and all of a sudden they're running some routes with him down the field and getting him all mismatches with linebackers and safeties. So it kind of had me thinking, if you can get the rush efficiency back up, and he had 203 carries, right? It wasn't like he had the Ricky Williams workload that made Ricky go into retirement the first time with Dave Wannstedt. But 200's about the kind of carry workload that I would probably put the cap on Devon to leave enough carries for other guys in the backfield for game situation type stuff or matchups on a week-to-week basis. But if you're going to have 200 carries or so, you need to average 5 yards a carry, obviously, to get 1,000 yards. I'm not a math guy, but I can pull that one off. But 87 targets, 78 receptions, no drops. Could Devon Achane challenge at any point for the 1,000? It's a pretty exclusive club. There's been only 3 players that have successfully done this. Roger Craig in 1985, Marshall Faulk with the Colts in 1990. No, he was with the Rams, I think, in 1999. Was he with the Rams or the Colts? And then Christian McCaffrey with the Panthers, and that was in 2019. He rushed for 1,387 and had 1,005 receiving yards on 116 receptions. It's like Jarvis Landry totals. But Marshall Faulk successfully did that in 99 as in his first year with the Rams. He rushed for 1,381 and then had 87 receptions for 1,048 yards, an average of 12 yards per catch. Roger Craig, I believe when he did it in 85, he just snuck over with 1,050 rushing yards and then led the NFL in receptions with 92. I don't foresee Devon getting that with the current iteration of the Dolphins. But if you told me the Dolphins 2026, I don't think it'll be a 2025 thing unless some kind of trade happens that I don't think is going to be destined for the Dolphins' immediate future. But when the Dolphins transition away from Tyreek Hill and that workload volume becomes available to spread between Jalen Waddle, whoever the new wide receiver 2 is, whether that's Malik Washington, Nick Westbrook-Ikine, somebody else, preferably, I think you would like to have Malik and Nick kind of in that 3-4 range. I think you'd ideally like to have a replacement level, a replacement for a not featured player, but like an upper echelon NFL wide receiver. If Jonnu Smith is still with the team, you're talking about freeing up 150 targets. And that's where, for me, I think I'm most intrigued about what De'Von Achane can eventually become. Is there's been talk, and I know Chris Kaufman from 3 Yards Per Carry has pointed this out, about the receiving chops that De'Von Achane has and how it might play in the slot. And I think the Dolphins, with some of their personnel usage and looking to be more physical and have more of a physical presence, and I really liked what some of their 21 pony personnel stuff has looked like. And that's with 2 running backs on the field at the same time, like authentic running backs, not necessarily 2 a fullback and a running back, but 2 backs, right? Jalen Wright and De'Von Achane, or De'Von Achane and Ollie Gordon / Alexander Madison, whoever you want to attribute that role to. Growing and expanding that kind of stuff, I think, is how Devon could potentially command an additional, let's be honest, probably 40 targets. And I'm not a math guy, but I got the calculator here. 40 targets divided by 17 games, be 2.5 extra targets per game if he catches the football at like a 90% rate like he did this past season. Now, you're going to have to break some more plays. You're going to have to hit some more home runs with those to get run after catch to get your reception yardage up. But I wouldn't dismiss the idea that in the not too distant future, not 2025, I don't think it'll be 2025. But if he didn't make some interesting runs towards that kind of production point, I think the name that comes to mind for me is Alvin Kamara. Where Kamara, fun fact about Alvin Kamara, has never rushed for 1,000 yards in his NFL career. The closest he came to rushing for 1,000 yards was this year as an age 29 back in New Orleans for a bad team, and he missed 3 games. 950. He's only gone over 900 rushing yards twice in his NFL career. And that's in large part because, A, he's never played in 17 games. He played in 16 games as a rookie, but only had 120 targets that season. He's missed at least 1 game every year since. And he's only 3 times had over 194 carries. So that Devon Achane total of 203 this year, I mean, that would be 4th highest in Alvin Kamara's 8-year NFL career. Right. But I think that kind of gives you a point of reference from a workload perspective, rushing the football. He's had as many seasons with triple-digit targets in the passing game as he does seasons with 200 or more carries in 8 years, 3 apiece. Those 100 target seasons came in 2017 as a rookie. In 2018 as a second-year player, he had 105. And in 2020, he had 107 targets. He caught 81, 81, and 83 passes. He caught 81, 81, 81, 83 balls in his first 4 seasons in the NFL. I guess ironically, the closest Alvin came to the 1,000-1,000 split was in 2020. He had 187 carries for 932 yards and then had 107 targets for 83 receptions and 756 yards. I think that's a great point of reference for a back who's had tons of production. I mean, he in 8 years has never had 1,000 yards rushing, but has 11,541 yards from scrimmage in 8 seasons, and he has 85 career touchdowns. I think if that should be the model of utilization that the Dolphins, if they want to maximize De'Von Achane, I think you can aspire to have that kind of role for him. And we talked about the carries, right? He's only had 3 seasons in which he's had 200 or more carries. He's had at least 200 touches of the football every single year of his 8-year career. And that doesn't matter whether it's 2021, in which he only played in 13 games. Doesn't matter whether he carried the ball 120 times like he did in 2017 or 240 times like he did in 2021. So I don't know that he'll get that super exclusive club, but the Alvin Kamara type of role would be the one that if I were the Dolphins, that's what I would aspire for his role to eventually become and develop into with consistency, not necessarily being a bell cow back. He's the kind of player that I think you get him the right touches. It's more important than getting him all of the touches from a ball carrier perspective as a rusher out of the backfield. But we only have 2 seasons worth of data to work with right now. So the resolution of that role long-term is only going to continue to come into focus across specifically 2025 in year 3 and then year 4, which will be the last year of his rookie contract. Devon Achane was not the only player that talked, however. We also heard from Chop Robinson. We're going to get into something that he talked a little bit about next here on Locked on Dolphins. So stick with us. Chop obviously had a super promising rookie campaign this past year. One of the best pressure totals in recent memory of pressures for a rookie player. And that coming from somebody who I thought the first 6-7 weeks of the season, that developmental curve existed there. And I had a really fun time a couple weeks ago when everybody was debating Chop Robinson's run defense to go back and look and see, hey, here's where Chop excelled. This is on Touchdown Miami. It's about a 40-minute film study if you want to go check it out. It's on Substack, Touchdown Miami. Here's where he excelled. Here's where he can continue to get better. Here's the reps that I thought he was at his best and what the alignment looks like. And here's the ask of that. Here's the technique of it. I think it's a great launch point for him to become a viable 3-down player, which was the question that I had when they drafted him, is how quickly can that part of his game get up to speed and develop? But the other thing that's going to be interesting to see how the Dolphins balance and juggle this year, getting back to that talking point of role and usage and the right reps, is trying to balance Jaelen Phillips and Bradley Chubb with Chop Robinson and maximizing the potential of all three of those players. And look, attrition and durability and injuries, if I was going to bet, would you get 17 games from all three of those guys? I'd probably say no, just because of the body of work of there's enough volume of injuries for both Jaelen and Bradley for me to not be willing to bet that they're going to fully stay healthy for the entirety of 2025. But they should all be healthy at the start of the season. And that's an exciting perspective for the Dolphins because these guys have not touched the field at all together. I mean, we haven't seen Jaelen Phillips and Bradley Chubb touch the field at the same time as active players on game day since Black Friday 2023. When the season kicks, we'll be almost 2 years removed from seeing those guys on the field at the same time together. Chop was asked, what do you think about the potential of this pass rush unit this year, considering you have healthy Jaelen Phillips, healthy Bradley Chubb after you didn't have Chubb at all last year and JP for most of last year? Chop said, I'm super excited just imagining the three of us on the field at the same time, or just me and JP, or JP and Bradley Chubb. It's kind of hard for tackles to say, all right, you got to study JP, you got to study Chubb, you got to study Chop. Now, if we're all on the field at the same time, it can kind of mess up the offense's mind because they wouldn't know what to do. And I agree with that assessment. And I think that's one of the things the Dolphins are placing their bets on this year with their aspirations and hopes for being a competitive football team, not just on a week-by-week basis, but for the postseason. Is you have the potential, the physical potential with Jaelen and Chop and Bradley to have one of the more diverse and I think dangerous group of threes when you get to passing downs. And that was the total opposite of what this football team had last year. And go back and I just did this week for Touchdown Miami. I did Cam Smith reps. Bless. That was a lot of fun. Looking for silver linings and upside, but you're watching some of these reps, and if it's not interior pressure and twists winning up front, or if it's not bringing extra bodies, it's chop or bust. Like there's just not a lot of winning one-on-one matchups. It's like wide receivers that can't separate, right? If teams are going to play in man, and you don't have guys that can get buckets against man coverage, you're going to have a long day at the office. And it really felt like that was the thing that defensively was the most inhibiting with last year's group was, if Calais Campbell's not on the field, teams can turn the center towards Zach Sealer. They can chip or give a little extra attention to Chop Robinson, and then they're still going to get 5 eligibles out into the routes with just somebody getting out late underneath. And you don't have consistent pressure because you don't have guys that can beat man-to-man protection on the other side of the formation. So then you got to try to twist, and then that's when you lose pocket integrity, and mobile quarterbacks can get outside the pocket on you, and then you got to start getting creative with where you're playing Jordan Brooks and try to bring him up the middle or walk him up on the edge, and then either drop him out, and then you're dropping the end on the other side. X's and O's versus Jimmy's and Joe's. And I think the Dolphins' scheme defensively is great. But do you have a few guys that can just beat dudes that beat the other dude because they're better as pass rushers this year? Healthy Jaelen Phillips, healthy Bradley Chubb, healthy Chop Robinson should, in turn, give you that. And like Chop, I'm excited to see it, and I hope we see as much of it as possible. That's going to do it for us today on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. Appreciate you guys, as always, for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your Friday. Make it a great weekend. We get any big news, we'll tackle it here on the show. Kyle Krabs, keep it locked in right here, Locked On Dolphins. That's it for me. I'm out of here. Go Fins.